Today, we are diving deep into a critical and honestly an often misunderstood part of sales and marketing, the persistence paradox. We're going to explore why your follow-up strategy, the one you think is helping, might actually be doing more harm than good, creating resistance instead of building real relationships.
This quote, this right here, is the heart of the problem we're dissecting. Look, we live in an era of just overwhelming noise. Our prospects are bombarded with messages, and their trust, well, it's at an all-time low. The old playbook, the one that taught us persistence is king and more contact equals more progress, it's failing. This quote challenges that whole idea head-on. It suggests that our relentless chase for a sale, if it's timed wrong, is the very thing that guarantees we lose it. So let's talk about how to move from a strategy of just sheer volume to one of perfect timing.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to define the premature ask and the real damage it causes. Then we'll get into the solution, a system I call the intent matching cycle. We'll dive deep into the psychology of permission that makes this system so powerful. From there, we'll lay out a practical framework for mastery you can actually use. And finally, we'll land on the core philosophy that holds it all together, respecting the prospect's pace.
All right, let's start with the core conflict, the premature ask. This is exactly where the paradox of persistence lives. See, we think we're being diligent and proactive, but from the prospect's point of view, our actions can feel totally different. They can feel aggressive, presumptuous, and ultimately just disrespectful of their time and their process.
I want you to really let that sink in for a second. Think about those automated sequences, those just checking in emails, the constant pings. We send them with the best intentions, right? We're just trying to stay top of mind. But what if, instead of building a bridge to a conversation, we're actually building a wall of resentment? What if every single one of those touches, sent at the wrong time, is a small act of self-sabotage, slowly chipping away at the trust we so desperately need to make a sale? This isn't just a theory, it's a costly problem, and it's rooted in a very specific and powerful psychological trigger.
And here it is. The trigger is called psychological reactance. This isn't just some sales jargon. It's a fundamental part of being human. When people feel like their freedom to choose is being threatened, when they feel pushed or pressured or cornered, they instinctively resist. It's a defense mechanism. They're just trying to reassert their autonomy. So that helpful push for a demo you send to a brand new lead, it doesn't feel helpful at all. It feels like a threat to their freedom, and they react by disengaging, ignoring you, or just saying no, simply to get back a sense of control. This defensive wall is the silent killer of countless deals.
So this requires a complete mindset shift. The goal is no longer maximizing touch points. It's about achieving synchronized contact. It's about matching our intensity to our prospect's intent, making sure every single interaction feels like the right message at the right time, because it perfectly aligns with where they are in their own decision-making journey. And that, right there, is the difference between being a pest and becoming a trusted partner.
Okay, so if the problem is unsynchronized contact that triggers all this reactance, what's the solution? Well, let's move on to the blueprint for fixing it, the intent matching cycle. I want you to think of this as a structured system for nurturing leads that is built not on assumptions or pressure, but on actually listening to their behavior and then responding with something relevant. It's designed to be completely friction-free.
And here's the fundamental flaw in so many marketing funnels. A person downloads one guide, and they are immediately bombarded with requests for a demo. We treat a cold lead, someone who is just starting their research, as if they're ready to buy right now. But in reality, they are miles away from that decision. This one-size-fits-all approach is precisely what triggers psychological reactance. It's the #1 reason why so many promising prospects just give up and leave the funnel.
The intent matching cycle fixes this with a 3-stage approach. It all starts with step 1, detection. We stop guessing a lead's interest and we start measuring it through their digital footprints, their actual behavior. Then comes step 2, value-based nurturing. For anyone who isn't ready to buy, we stop pitching and we start helping. We provide value with no strings attached, and that builds trust. And only then, once the behavioral signals are absolutely undeniable, do we move to step 3, the permission-based ask. This is where we finally request a higher commitment action, but now it feels like a natural and logical next step, not some premature, pushy sales tactic.
Let's get a little more specific on detection. How do we actually measure a lead's temperature? We listen to their actions. These digital footprints are the clues they leave behind that tell us exactly what they're thinking and where they are in their journey. A cold lead is just exploring. They're clicking on top-of-funnel educational blogs. A warm lead is moving into serious consideration. They're downloading detailed things like white papers. And a hot lead? They are signaling strong intent to buy. They're repeatedly visiting your pricing page or looking at implementation docs. By categorizing behavior like this, we can stop shouting at everyone and start whispering the right thing to the right person.
So why does all of this matter? Because it directly impacts the single most important metric in this whole system, lead velocity. By removing the psychological friction from those premature asks, we create a smoother, faster path from awareness to purchase. The prospect moves forward at their own pace, but because we're not creating resistance, that pace naturally gets faster. What does that mean for you? Shorter sales cycles, higher conversion rates, and a lower customer acquisition cost. This entire system is engineered to maximize lead velocity.
Now that we've seen the what and the how of the cycle, let's go deeper into the why. We're going to explore the underlying human behaviors that make the intent matching cycle so incredibly effective. This is the psychology of permission.
At its core, the entire philosophy really comes down to this one powerful principle: autonomy. People need to feel like they are in control of their decisions. The old model of selling tries to take that control away through urgency and pressure. This new model does the exact opposite. It provides resources, it educates, and it waits for clear signals, which effectively hands control back to the prospect. By respecting their need for autonomy, we completely bypass their defenses and transform from an adversary into a trusted advisor.
This slide really illustrates the two paths perfectly. On the left, you've got all the tactics that trigger that defensive reactance. Premature asks, high-pressure follow-ups, ignoring their actual behavior. That's the path of friction. On the right, you have the alternative path, the one that builds reciprocity. Instead of asking, we provide value. Instead of pressure, we solve a small problem for them first with a helpful piece of content. This kind of unconditional value fundamentally changes the dynamic of the relationship from transactional to relational.
And that brings us to the second key psychological driver here, the reciprocity principle. It's a really deep-seated human tendency. When someone gives us something of value for free, with no strings attached, we feel this subtle internal pull to give something back. So in this context, when we provide incredible educational content, helpful tools, genuine insights, all without demanding a sale, we are building a reservoir of goodwill and trust. The prospect begins to see us as a valuable resource, and when the time comes to make a decision, that goodwill makes them far, far more likely to choose us.
All right, we've covered the theory and the psychology. Now let's get practical. How do you actually build this system? This section provides a clear framework for mastery, turning all these concepts into an actionable blueprint.
Mastery really comes down to executing 3 tangible steps. First, you have to explicitly define temperature thresholds. This means sales and marketing get in a room and agree on what specific actions classify a lead as cold, warm, or hot. Second, you map content to temperature. You audit and organize all of your assets to align perfectly with each stage. And third, you automate temperature-based routing. You use your marketing automation platform to move leads between nurturing sequences automatically, all based on their real-time behavior. This table right here is your cheat sheet for mapping content to temperature. For your cold leads, you give them high-level educational content to help them better understand their problem. For your warm leads, you provide things like case studies and comparison sheets to help them evaluate their options. And for your hot leads, you provide ROI calculators and implementation plans to help them justify the purchase to their team. See? Every single piece of content has a specific job to do, perfectly matched to the prospect's mindset at that exact moment.
And finally, let's zoom out and really focus on the core philosophy that holds this entire strategy together. This is the fundamental belief you have to adopt for this to truly work for you.
This quote, "This is the essential insight. Our job as marketers and salespeople is not to apply heat with aggressive follow-up. It's to build a better fireplace with valuable content. We cannot force someone to be ready to buy. Any attempt to do so will only backfire and trigger that reactance we talked about. Our true role is to create a nurturing, value-rich environment where they can educate themselves, build trust, and move toward a decision at their own natural speed. We are facilitators, not aggressors."
You know, when this system works perfectly, the prospect doesn't even feel like they're in a sales process. To them, it's just a natural journey of discovery. They found a helpful resource, they learned what they needed to learn, and when they were finally ready, the logical next step was just presented to them. It's a smooth, helpful, and consultative experience. The selling becomes invisible because it's been completely replaced by helping.
And this right here is the ultimate takeaway. Stop thinking about pushing people through your funnel. That model is broken because it creates resistance at every single step. Instead, focus on building a center of gravity based on value.
Create such helpful, relevant, and insightful resources that you naturally pull people toward you. When you replace pressure with value, and when you fundamentally respect your prospect's pace, you don't just close more deals, you create customers who trust you before they've even paid you a dime.